Hello again everyone, I'm Nizzahon, and I'm here to bring you guys another MTG Top 10. This week, Seiben and I are teaming up again to look at a creature type from two different angles. While Seiben is looking at the lore of Merfolk across the many planes in which they appear in Magic, I'm going to analyze the 10 Merfolk in Magic's history that have made the biggest impact on the competitive scene. There have been 161 Merfolk printed in Magic's history, and as a tribe, they are historically one of the strongest, putting up strong finishes across every single format in Magic, even Vintage. Let's look at the top 10 Merfolk who have done the most in these competitive formats. First, a quick reminder on how I score things for these lists. Cards receive points depending on how many Grand Prix or Pro Tour Top 8s they have received, with the Pro Tour Top 8 worth twice as much as a Grand Prix Top 8. The cards in this list are arranged numbers 10 through 1, with the highest score being found at number 1. Alongside each of the cards, you also see the breakdown of these points and some other relevant information about the card, such as what formats it has seen success in. In addition to events that are called Pro Tours and Grand Prix, I also count the Worlds events as Pro Tour Top 8s, including those before the Pro Tour was created in 1996. I consider Legacy and Vintage Championships as Pro Tour Top 8s as well, so that those formats can be better represented in the score of the cards, because Vintage has no Grand Prix or Pro Tours and Legacy doesn't have Pro Tours. In the description of this video, you can find those Merfolk that managed to get at least 1 point but didn't quite make the list, so you can find your favorite Merfolk down there. Also, in the comments, try your hand at guessing what the number 1 Merfolk will be on the list. Now, let's talk about some fish. At number 10, we have True Name Nemesis. Printed in Commander 2013, True Name Nemesis is only legal in Legacy and Vintage, and it is a candidate for being one of the most influential cards ever printed outside of a mainstream expansion. This Merfolk is powerful because it gains protection from a named player. In one-on-one Magic, that more or less means that Nemesis represents a 7-turn clock at best, and one that can't really be interacted with. As the reminder text says, your opponent's creatures can't block it, they can't target it with any source, they can't damage it with any source, and so forth. The only way to deal with it is with a board sweeper, and it has to be a sweeper that doesn't do damage. Pyroclasm, for example, won't get it done. As soon as it was printed, people began realizing that this card would be incredibly powerful in Legacy, and in the first Legacy Grand Prix after it was printed, the Nemesis picked up 3 top 8s, and on the one after that, it picked up 4. The kinds of decks it has appeared in were of various strategies: Stoneblade, Bant Control, Patriot Control, Canadian Threshold, and Delver. For a while, if you were playing enough blue sources, you might as well be playing a Nemesis. What's more, the Nemesis actually appeared in a deck that won the Vintage Championship in 2013, a deck with several other Merfolk on this list in it. Essentially a staple in Legacy and still seeing some play in Vintage, it seems likely that True Name Nemesis, who picked up a top 8 at Grand Prix Louisville in January of 2017, will continue to climb up this list as time goes on. At number 9, we have Augur of Bolas. Augur provides a 2-mana 1/3, a decent body for blocking, and then gives you some card selection by allowing you to choose an instant or sorcery card and put it into your hand from among the top 3 cards of your library. This is pretty sweet for a control deck. He can block 2 power threats and draw you your next big removal spell. The Augur primarily saw play in standard control decks, including Blue-White Flash, Bant Control, and Esper Control. His most dominant showing was at Pro Tour Gatecrash in 2013, where he appeared in 4 of the top 8 decks. However, he also managed a couple of top 8s in Modern, appearing in Scapeshift decks, where he was good because he could find you your Scapeshift, or whatever else you need from the top of your library, and in a blue-white control deck as well. However, unlike the cards below him, the Augur has not picked up a top 8 in several years, and will likely find himself slipping down this list in the coming years. At number 8, we have a card that is somewhat controversial, Waterfront Bouncer. As you can see on the card, it doesn't say he's a Merfolk, and he doesn't really look like one. Instead, he is just a Spell Shaper, a creature type from Mask's block that allowed you to turn any spell in your hand into some iconic Magic spell. In Waterfront Bouncer's case, this meant Unsummon. For 1 blue mana, you could discard a card, tap the Bouncer, and bounce a creature, which is some good points for flavor. This is a fairly powerful ability as it can allow for massive tempo swings, and it forces your opponent into playing completely differently if they don't kill the Bouncer. While he wasn't originally a Merfolk, he has since had his creature type updated during the Grand Creature Type update, which went down in 2007. Not really resembling a Merfolk, other than having blue skin, seems like kind of a weird choice of a creature type to me. But hey, Gatherer says he is a Merfolk, so that means he is one. While a flavor success in terms of his name, which has bounce in it, the fact that a dude this ripped is only a 1/1 is a bit of a flavor fail too. But anyway, let's talk about how he did in competitive play. In block, he made 2 top 8s at Pro Tour New York in 2000. This was a block that was pretty much loaded with Rebels and Control decks, and the Bouncer got into the top 8 on the only 2 non-Rebel decks there. At Worlds in 2001, which was the standard format, he picked up 3 top 8s, all in decks featuring the card Opposition, which basically just tried to outlast the opponent and grind out a win. The deck was loaded with counter spells, and you could basically decide not to use your counter magic on creature spells if you had your Bouncer in play, since the Bouncer could just keep bouncing them even more efficiently. The Bouncer was in there to help hold off your opponent until you got your opposition online, and he did a pretty good job of that. He also did pretty well in Extended, where he was especially good in the Blue-Green Madness decks from 2003 to 2004, since you could not only efficiently bounce your opponent's creature, but you were also able to take away the fact that you even had to discard a card, provided the discarded card was one with Madness and you had enough mana to pay its Madness cost. Funnily enough, more recently, the fact that the Bouncer is now a Merfolk has actually become relevant, as he was in the same deck that other Merfolk on this list were in that won the Vintage Championship in 2013. At number 7, we have Curse Catcher, a 1-mana 1/1 with some utility. It has the ability to sacrifice itself to counter instants and sorceries. It would be solid no matter what, but Curse Catcher becomes really good in any deck that focuses on Merfolk synergies and has lords that make the catcher even bigger, and as a result, all of Curse Catcher's top 8s came in a Merfolk deck in one format or another. In Standard, it appeared in its first Merfolk decks, picking up a Pro Tour and a Grand Prix top 8 while in the format. In Modern, it picked up 4 Grand Prix top 8s in Merfolk decks. It also picked up a top 8 in the Extended format in 2010 in a Merfolk deck. Legacy is where it has probably done the most work, though, picking up 2 Legacy Championship top 8s and 3 Grand Prix top 8s. It also appeared in the Merfolk deck that won the 2013 Vintage Championship, which we've already mentioned. Merfolk have kind of faded in Legacy as of late. Curse Catcher hasn't picked up a top 8 in the format since 2005, but Merfolk are still around in Modern in smaller numbers, and the Catcher last picked up a top 8 there in 2016, so it isn't forever ago. It seems like Modern is probably the place that Curse Catcher has the best chance to pick up some more points. At number 6, we have a Merfolk Lord, Marrow Reejerey. Providing the usual boost of +1/+1 to other Merfolk, the Reejerey comes with another little bonus. You can tap or untap permanents anytime you play a Merfolk. This means you can get a blocker out of the way before combat, untap a Merfolk who attacks so that it can block 2, untap your Aether Vial so you can use it more than once, and so on. Obviously most at home in a Merfolk-centric deck, that is where the Reejerey has done all of its work, much of which it has done alongside our other creatures who were from Lorwyn, such as Curse Catcher. The Reejerey actually has all of the exact same top 8s as the Curse Catcher, but also has one additional one. It got a top 8 at a block-constructed Pro Tour in 2008, something Curse Catcher didn't do. Similarly, Modern seems to be the best place for this Merfolk right now if he wants to improve his score, as they have fallen out of favor in Legacy while they still see a bit of play in Modern. At number 5, we have another Merfolk who saw play alongside other Merfolk, Silvergill Adept. Part of a cycle of creatures in Lorwyn who asked you to reveal a creature of a certain type to make the cost of the creature lower, Silvergill Adept was probably the best of the cycle. In a Merfolk deck, the Adept is always a 2-mana for a 2/1 that draws you a card. And when played alongside all the Merfolk Lords that are available, that's even scarier. It made a lot of the same top 8s that Curse Catcher and Reejerey did, but it manages to beat them both out because it has appeared in basically every Merfolk deck to ever top 8 in any format since it was printed, and that isn't quite the case for Curse Catcher and Reejerey, who sometimes get left out of Merfolk decks. After a string of Merfolk who basically only see play alongside one another, we move to a Merfolk who has seen play in all sorts of different places. Merfolk Looter has had multiple runs through Standard. Originally printed in Exodus, it has seen reprints in multiple core sets, including 7th edition, 10th edition, Magic 2010, and Magic 2012, giving it an ample amount of time to see play in constructed formats. Merfolk Looter is actually a fairly iconic card in Magic, as evidenced by the fact that we call anytime we have a draw a card, discard a card effect, looting. It saw play in the opposition decks we mentioned earlier, alongside Waterfront Bouncer. It could also help you dig for your opposition, and it also saw play alongside the Bouncer in Blue-Green Madness decks, where it was a Madness outlet, and it also saw play in Psychotog decks, where the Bouncer didn't see any play. When it got reprinted, it saw even more play in Standard, this time in Blue-White Delver decks. It also saw play in the extended version of Blue-Green Madness, and in Psychotog decks, and in 5-color control decks, and in a deck called Super Grow, which was an aggro control deck. The Looter hasn't seen much play in years, though, and will probably lose ground to its more tribal-oriented brethren as time goes on. Speaking of tribal, at number 3 I have Lord of Atlantis, one of the original Lords printed in Alpha. The Lord has been reprinted a ton of times, and if he's been legal, he has usually been a big part of what makes Merfolk decks so successful. He is the best of the cycle of Lords from Alpha because he only costs 2 mana instead of 3 that the others cost, and most Lords in general actually cost 3, so in a lot of ways he's just the best Lord. The ability to give Island Walk is always relevant, as Merfolk decks usually run ways to turn lands into islands to take advantage. In Standard, he has managed 2 Worlds top 8s, 1 Pro Tour top 8, and 2 Grand Prix top 8s, all in Merfolk decks. In Modern, he's picked up a ton of Grand Prix top 8s in Merfolk decks. In Extended, he's done the same. But one really notable thing he did that no one else on this card did in Extended is he managed to pick up the first top 8 ever for any Merfolk deck, which was at Pro Tour Rome in 1998, as well as a top 8 at Pro Tour Amsterdam, alongside many of the other cards on this list. And at number 2, we have Master of Waves, which was one of the most powerful cards in the Standard environment in which it existed. Devotion was pushed really hard by Wizards, and this mythic rare was basically the best reason to go mono blue. He generated a ton of elemental tokens when he was played, and that was a difficult thing to deal with. Generally, if you didn't, you just lost. For good measure, the Master also has protection from red, making it difficult to deal with efficiently. It appeared almost exclusively in Devotion to Blue decks when it was in Standard, managing to rack up 3 top 8s at Pro Tour Theros in 2013, and the following months it was nothing short of dominant, putting up 5 top 8s at Grand Prix Santiago, 3 at Albuquerque, 3 at Vienna, 3 at Grand Prix Shizuoka, and so on. It was one of the most ubiquitous cards in all of Theros Standards for several months. The card was powerful enough that it wasn't only limited to Standard though, and it made the transition to modern Merfolk decks. Luckily, Merfolk decks are already mono blue, already have lots of cards with multiple blue mana symbols, and love Merfolk, so the Master was a natural fit. Like all the Merfolk from modern decks, it has been a little while since he's seen play there, but Merfolk are still around and have a decent shot really at any modern Grand Prix this year. And at number 1 we have Tidebinder Mage. The Mage saw play in the same Standard as Master of Waves, but it benefited from the fact that it was a good sideboard card in any deck with blue in it, because she could tap down powerful red and green creatures like Pelucranos. This meant that in addition to seeing play in Devotion to Blue decks, it also showed up in blue-black control decks, in Delver decks, in Devotion to Deemer, Devotion to Azorius, and so on while it was in Standard. Devotion to Blue decks were even willing to run her main board, even if her text box didn't do anything sometimes, because she was a 2-mana 2/2 worth 2 Devotion. Like the Master of Waves, it also sees play in modern Merfolk decks, where it is a nice way of answering a Tarmogoyf. Well, that does it for this top 10 list. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to click the like button. If you have any questions about this list or suggestions for a future list, post them in the comments below. And if you want to make sure you catch more of my top 10s, don't forget to subscribe here to the Aether Hub and to my channel, NizzahonMagic, for more. Thanks for watching.